I now look to Amy Webb to continue the case for the proposition.
So I'd like to give my thanks to the President, to the honorable members of this House for hosting us, and to the opposition for that delightfully naive and misguided argument in his youth about love. I would like for you all to take a moment, picture the scene. London, 1593. A man with dark hair and a goatee sitting at a desk with ink-stained fingers feels an ache deep in his belly. He says aloud, "How can you understand the emptiness that seeks a soulmate? Love knows nothing of rank or riverbank." Honorable members, can you picture the scene? Can you picture it? Do you know who I am describing? Shakespeare, right? Actually, no, that was Joseph Fiennes in that movie Shakespeare in Love. And that was him describing our obsession with this idea of true love, our interpretation of what it must have been like when Shakespeare himself was falling in love and writing all of those sonnets. But, honorable members of this House, I ask you, what if the original premise of true love was wrong? What if, in fact, true love is nothing more than a logical fallacy? Is it possible that Shakespeare led the future of all of humanity astray, and that we've just been witnessing the compounding effects of his wonderful storytelling for the past 5 centuries? True love is a formula that was introduced to us centuries ago. Dating applications and websites have accelerated the speed with which that formula works. But in reality, true love is merely an outdated relic of a bygone era. It's a myth that we have all willingly bought into, even if we don't recognize it as such. And for the sake of humanity's future, we must abandon this myth tonight. Now, your Shakespeare invented the rom-com with A Midsummer Night's Dream and Much Ado About Nothing, but it was my Hollywood that industrialized and monetized the promise of true love. And it's a formula that's fairly simple. It goes something like this. 2 characters meet, they part ways because of circumstance or some kind of misunderstanding or some kind of tragic entanglement. Then they confront a central challenge, once again, central to their relationship. Then they overcome that challenge, and then they reunite in some kind of lovely, happy ending. Our interpretation of true love, capital T, capital L, is rooted in that formula, which divides our humanity now into an average of 102 minutes. And that central challenge in movies happens at around minute 28. They overcome the challenge sometime around minute 87, and then true love prevails just around the time that the credits are rolling. Unless you're screenwriter Richard Curtis, and then the math looks a little different. His math is more complicated. There are 26 characters divided into 9 groups, living through 9 romantic entanglements. All of them have different problems to overcome, so for him it's more like 108 minutes until we get our happy ending. True love as a formula, it works on all of us. So My Big Fat Greek Wedding, What Women Want, Hitch, Pretty Woman, Something About Mary, The Proposal, Sex and the City, The Silver Linings Playbook, combined, they have amounted to $1.4 billion gross. It's a lucrative industry selling this idea of true love. Now, behavioral economists would describe our obsession with true love as anchoring bias. That's when we become over-reliant on the very first piece of information that we hear, and it influences our worldviews thereafter. So if you think about it, and you've heard this already from my colleague, we are inundated with true love stories from basically the time that we're born. As children, we hear Cinderella, we hear The Little Mermaid. As teens, we read As You Like It in Twelfth Night. As adults, we read The English Patient, we start seeing movies, and literally for the past 2 decades, anybody on planet Earth has had no escape from Celine Dion, Leo, and Kate, and their hearts going on and on and on and on. Without realizing it, the true love narrative has been with us since birth. It is literally inescapable. Our minds interpret the patterns that we see as true love because of that repetition and that familiarity. So isn't it possible that the compounding effect of anchoring bias creates a sort of selective perception, and it makes us think that true love is the norm rather than the result of a very, very successful centuries-old literary formula? And that takes us to the present day. So right now, technology promises to accelerate the idea of true love using an updated version of the formula. It's called an algorithm, a word that you're probably hearing more and more. Now, algorithms are nothing more than a set of instructions. You put data points in. On a website, for example, are you a cat person? Are you a dog person? Do you like pizza? What postal code do you live in? And you're supposed to get true love on the other side. Years ago, I was looking for a partner. I was living in Philadelphia at the time, and I wanted to calculate the probability of finding the true love that I had been promised by Shakespeare and by Richard Curtis, who I blame for everything. Using their definitions of true love, I started running the numbers. So math is a big part of this. You've already heard about numbers from my colleague, but I'm going to continue to show how the numbers tell us a different story. So I was living in Philadelphia. There were approximately 1.5 million people in the city at that point. I'm straight. I was looking for a man. It's about 50% of the population, or about 750,000 people. I was looking for somebody between the ages of 30 and 36, which at the time was 4% of the population. That meant I now have a pool of 30,000 potential daters that I could go with. I'm Jewish. I'm Jewish. So I'm not religious, but I was looking for somebody who was like gastronomically Jewish, like I am. So that's about 2.3% of the population. And that now takes the number down to 690. You figure I have to have some kind of chemistry with that other person, that intrinsic quality that connects us. And I'm assuming that's about 1 in 10. And I hate sports. So basically what this math amounts to is that there was only 35 people out of 1.5 million that I could date in the entire city of Philadelphia. And as an aside, I have really bad news for the members of this house. I ran the numbers for you as well. The numbers don't look good. If you're a 20-year-old lesbian who's interested in theology, you have a 0.001% chance of finding true love at Oxford. If you're a male graduate student who's really interested in engineering, why didn't you go to Cambridge? Is it possible, honorable members, that going forward we need to address our anchoring bias towards the literary and Hollywood idea of true love and instead create our own narratives? So I would ask the honorable members of this House to consider what I did. I threw away that true love formula, and I came up with not 7 basic narrative points, but instead 72 very, very specific data points that I would need in order to find somebody that I was looking for. And those points ranged all over the place. It wasn't cat person or dog person. I had very specific data points around finances. I was also looking for somebody who weighed 20 pounds more than me at all times, regardless of what I weighed. And I took those data points and reverse engineered the dating algorithms on the website. And it turns out my algorithm worked really, really well. In fact, I, after the end of all of this, found the one person using a different set of numbers that I thought I could spend the rest of my life with. And in fact, he's sitting right there. I'm happy that makes you happy, honorable members, and I will tell you why. I would ask you to consider, are we chasing the idea of love or an ideal of true love defined by somebody who lived 453 years ago? Now, we have to abandon this comfortable idea that we have, this comfortable formula of true love. Instead, we have to be willing to accept that true love has absolutely no place in our modern world as it's always been defined. And not only does it have no place, but true love never existed to begin with. I'm a pragmatist, and I'm a futurist. I use data to try to figure out what's coming next. So let me give you a very quick glimpse in the few remaining seconds that I have. In China, there's a bot called Xiaoice that has been interacting with humans, convincing humans that it, and she is gendered, is real. When the humans found out all throughout China that Xiaoice is a bot, they didn't care. they were happy to have that relationship. In the United States, we have a company called Real Doll. In the spring, it's going to be releasing a doll that has lifelike skin and is powered through AI. You'll be able to train and develop a personality and a companion that is a robot. And you can talk to your humanoid doll, and you can have an entire relationship with it. Within the next 20 years, we're going to see a convergence of certain technologies that will call into question our cherished beliefs about true love. And so, isn't it possible that in the future we won't fall in love, but rather program it? You have no choice but to vote for the proposition. True love never existed. And this should actually give us all hope, because it means that we don't have to fit ourselves into somebody else's formula. We get to write our own stories going forward, even if those stories involve robots.